Anything that depends on the pandemic, maybe not being a 5 ilena or maybe sometimes in Pemere 5. Anything that depends on the pandemic, maybe not being a 5 ilena or maybe such a 2 or 3 extra. Mangshara 5 spend 250. Mpagisi moto ang netaboko Macroza, I was sister like Molina Square. Gengaboshwa for Europa in assault. It was 209 Europa in Aboshwangayo. And then assault GPH 2011. Sanong lahat more experience in Tezero, young told as we teenager. My name is ngwela emkotini ngawazi ukuthi enhleka bo sister uzophuma kanjani kuwe yabo dala sipalisa for rehab yabo sister wama sithembisa amanga bagcine bangasizi angithola kunini maybe manje sipalise boma 5 ama rehab basithembisa amanga abiza abantu bakhona namaye mangathola usizo sister wami ngajabula yabo. Echarting ngapolelwa umakoko yabo sister and then ngapolelwa ilento ichirami engingcosinayo ngithola and then ngaqala ukuba trauma engcondweni ngithola and then umunye umngane wami bekayibhema vele lento yabo sister and then that day benginemali vele ngathi ngithistise yona yabo ngoba mangibhekile ayibhemile ngibona feel freely ngithola yangakhona yabo ngaqala lapho ukubhema 2006.
Started my drugs when I was in Europe, when I was 24, if not 23, because it's been like 5 years. Yeah. Yakala so. I have friends, Langsalakon. There was this one friend of mine, Ntombi. We are paying Ntombi. Ntombi, okay, angazi na go to pay man. Kandalam like uncle up, angazi nix ngama drugs. Okay, one thing we am 17, Ntombi, Eshinkatel. I'm a light sleeper, like natural. Okay, Ntombi athi kimi mina ngine solution into ezonglalisa okay aphuma uNtombi abopha izolo abuyi shayi 2 okay ngishayi 2 I slept like a baby for the first time empilweni yami okay this works ekhanda lami bekuduma ukuthi intsango because bengingakaze ngibheme intsango empilweni yami so bengizitshela lokho after 3 days of this 2 scave ngiyalala mangithi ngiyavuka on the 4th day mele ngiyemsebenzini ngina stomach cramps phethwe ikhanda umzimba wami nje ukhathele uyimess ngizibuze kwenzakalani manje okay ngidonsa ifone Ntombi hayi mfethu ngiyagula uyagula uphethwe yini hayi man Ntombi ngiphethwe ikhanda isisamsiphlungu like nje umzimba wami uhlangahlangena ngisunderstand athi hayibheka ushaywa down.
Family home is safe.
Kamodi rakeng la bona hore go bya ha ona selo diraka di empty ha ona dipitsa ke dipitsanyana tse ding tse le motho ka sapeng diraka shidi di empty go bo ke go we wana o ka le yona e nka itlhatso ya ba clean o tlo itse nga bona le monona le festere mo ka mo ke ane hangwa shine e pula ena Laiwa, come. Can I have a chin come? No, not if it's the ruling season. What's here, everything?
You go in Gaga, don't you?
Hasile.
Who has a longer the teaspoon gone to oh, my baby, chef. Who has a longer the teaspoon gone to?
Ah, it's a hot man with the flop or one ish. The flop was a nagidi, Rabano ish. Hotman.
How has he always that?
Ash. No shasha about
fit. As I wish I were more clunky, fit out in. When I look at no, it's in fact to look is a fit. At least I'm Banuta Laguna, Lilata, Contru, Pelona Matita Salagamotasa Bridge.
Thank you to Samba Cocoa, who look at one or destroyer. I couldn't tell it at the patrol. I think Nkanaka di Busa, Parangwana, Omokoti. The way at injectang, ibile ya mo affecta. Because why it have a fellet o ka ro tlhabile wrong a ruruge. And then ha ruruga go bana la o ka re skaku. mara se se ka kune kore ntho e le o ka re ke mo go wrong and then ya mo ruhisa morago e ba e kima ikana go khosa gore a te khathe ena self gore a remove ntho ela
ana beno le molotong wa bona mo e sna ke khaotile
Jive
injection
o itlhabile le o itlhaba jwang da ke understand
ke tla be ke sena di-vein mo matsong fro and bjaanong ga ke crave because gore ke no nyaka vein nngwe le nngwe e tshwana
so mo le keng gwa bola o ka bona o message
ga ke tla sepetlela na o bulile o kgona go bona the inner part ya loto
keng le jegile
ana le jehile
go senyegile mo ka o shebile ba ga le gola
Dichomi. Di-friends tsa haya starta ho ya ko high school. Ya o startile hona mo ho change ho chaba sekolo. And then he ba tlonya ka motswadi. Ho ile nna a ra botsa mama ka zama go mmolelela a kra ile gore o ntse like dikhwedi. Almost 8 months a sa sekolong.
a tlhapa tsoga a go ya sekolong a ntse a sa ya sekolong
Sa sekolong he ke mmotsisang botsa gore nna ba nna ko sekhweng somewhere. Ya go senyile hona mo.
option tla go chiletwana e dula le teng because o ka kgetha di-pain or o ka kgetha long cows ke option
na dipeni ka di khotlelela wa bona mara o tla le mo reng ya e sa khotlelega bjanong
because no le lo le di wa so kodi wena o fila jwang ko ntlong lo le di kentse di chain da mo menyako dear wena o fila jwang
ke feel bad na ke sa mmotsa o le dineta wa bona la pile gore man nete e ya ka o lapa wa bona nka tsube bona ba nyaka nna ke tlwele mara ho ya ka nna wa bona and nna no decision ya ka e ke la pile wa man no wa bona na ke nyaka lo vaya mo tshwente
bega
ke vaya ke khole more maybe ke tla phela
lo thola thuso
ke starta fresh ke thole thuso ke be sharp
I've said before that, you know, these kids were outcast to me. You know, they were like, you know, disgusting, you know. And as society, I really feel that we've kind of, you know, thrown them to the ends of the earth. But I've actually now come close to meet these kids. And it sounds like I'm contradicting myself because on one hand, I feel as if we need to show them tough love, draw a line in the sand, and if they step beyond it, you know, kick them out the house. On the other hand, I've actually started to understand the physiological effects that Nyaupe has, Momiling. It's actually, the withdrawals are, you know, according to these kids, unbearable. In a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, I think we need to get more understanding instead of just Nyaupe this, Nyaupe that. You know what, bana baba sinya ba utswa, you know, throw them out, you know, to the ends of the earth. It's really just to understand.
Hello. Okay, good day. My name is Jean. I'm here today to tell you my life story. I also did NLP. Well, I've been addicted for about 22 years. I've been clean for 6 months now. And also, I had a normal childhood, actually. I'll be here to tell you my life story. So, I had a normal childhood, loving parents, 2 brothers, younger brothers. But I remember in school that I never fitted in. I never felt like I fitted in, and that made me angry. So I used to cause a lot of chaos in school, vandalizing, fighting. And that feeling, doesn't matter what I did, never went away. Then I got to, it actually progressed to such an extent that I was in a couple of primary schools and high schools. Then I was sent to reformatory, where I finished my matric at the age of 15, and then I was led to go out in the world, still not fitting in anywhere. Met my first husband, and he introduced me to well, as you guys know, it Naupe, but heroin. I started smoking at the age of 15, 16. Well, actually 15, was that same year still, when I finished matric. And it was within weeks, I was also spiking, injecting heroin. And I can relate to what he said about the sickness. It feels like when you don't have your drug, it's not you want to stop, you so badly want to stop using. It's not nice taking your parents' stuff. It's not nice stealing people's cars. It's not nice selling yourself. But the agonizing pain you go through, it feels like your flesh is getting torn off your body. Everything is aching and paining, and you're throwing up, and it feels like you're going to die. So during my journey, up until this point, I have done a lot of things I'm not very proud of due to addiction. And yeah, I ended up on the street, evidently, after losing my first husband, who was murdered. My second husband committed suicide. My brother died the beginning of this year, on the 25th of March. Also, he didn't overdose, but he, how can I put it? It was drug-related. He had a seizure, a heart attack, and then multiple organ failure because he was so weak that he couldn't carry on. I was looking after him, but at this point, I was also 25 kilos on the street, on crutches. I had maggots coming out of my legs. My hip had made a very big abscess. The doctors are fixing it now, but I mean, it's going to take time. And I remember standing at the robot begging and for money for us. And this lady came to me, someone stopped, and they asked me, would I take help? And up until this point, I actually just wanted to die. I didn't want to live anymore. My son has been taken away due to my own, what I've done. Everything I loved has been taken away from me. So now, here's this person that comes up to me dirty, I'm thin, I'm a drug addict, I'm begging at the robot, and she's giving me a chance to maybe there's a slight chance I can change my life. So I say yes. Now after this one very small, I thought it was a small decision, but it was quite a huge, because after just that one decision, everything happened so quickly. God played such a big role from there that I decided, okay, I do not want to die anymore, I want to live. The next day I went to hospital, where I detoxed, because with NAPA you need medication, or because you can die. Obviously the physical state I was in, it was bad. So I needed hospitalization. I went to a public hospital, which was not nice, obviously. After that, I was booked in, I was actually given it, because now I'm homeless. My family didn't want anything to do with me at this time. And even if they did, they weren't financially, because I've ruined them, me and my brother. So this lady that helped me was connected with like a fellowship, like Alcoholics Anonymous. And in the fellowship, she made a couple of phone calls, and I ended up by a rehab called Tranquility in Linden, where it's something I would never be able to afford. And the owner of this place, Gibson, gave me 7 days for free. Now, I was so malnourished and so weak, I couldn't walk up the stairs. As I said, I was 25 kilos at the time. The people in the rehab had to carry me up and down the stairs for about the first week or so. And for the first time in my life, I was, how can I say, they introduced me to the 12-step program, and I actually found God. I always knew he was there. He always looked after me, and it's like, but I was always suggesting to him, and I never really understood the greatness of God. So, and there I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, which he did. Just what I wanted to say was, like, when as a child, or if you don't fit in, ask for help. Even if you are in a position where you feel, shit, I can't stop, or I need something to make me feel better, speak to somebody. Don't be shy to speak to someone. Ask for help. pick the right person that you are comfortable to speak to and speak to them. I mean, if I did that, I would never have gotten, as I said, into prostitution. I would have never ended up on the street. I would have never almost lost my legs. It's by the grace of God, because obviously He had a bigger plan for my life. And today I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, that's me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I would like to now call Ms. Kanyima Gubani, who is going to facilitate our panel discussion. Kanyima Gubani is a radio and TV presenter, TV and film producer, and we are so honored to have you facilitate this discussion, and we hope everyone will benefit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oktula, what a powerful story. To you, my sister, I just want you to know that God has. So many people have not lived to share the testimony that you have today. But God has a plan for your life. They say there's no testimony without a test. And you've been through the most, and here you are today. Can we just give a round of applause? Today, as we're going to have this discussion, I think ngicabangile for a long time, what would I share? And it became clear that it's not about what I would share, but that so many of us just need to reflect on our own lives. Akekho noyone la in this room that can say substance abuse doesn't affect me. It may not be you personally, but we've got parents in this house, namhlanje. We've got young people. It may be you, it may be a friend, it may be somebody you know at school, somebody you know at university, but today we're here to share the message that you are not alone, but there is the restorative, there is the healing power of God that is at play in each and every one of us. And there is no situation, and there is no drug abuse, there is no substance, there is nothing that you can go through that God cannot heal. And so today we're going to have a discussion where we're going to bring experts to come and talk to us. But we're also going to speak about the aspect of faith. Because without God, truly, she wouldn't be standing here today. She wouldn't be here today. So it's nothing that I have to talk about in theory. She is here as a testimony, and she has a testimony that she can share with each and every one of us. And we do have more questions and more details that we're going to share. But without wasting any time, I'd like to call my panel that's going to be assisting us in our discussion this afternoon or this evening. I'd like to start by asking Uphumlani Somakala to come on stage. Uphumlani is a senior counselor at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. Do you see how he ran up the stairs? Full of energy. He's also studying his master's. He's doing his master's in clinical psychology, and he is focusing on the stigmatization of mental health in Black communities. So really looking at the way that we view mental health in Malokishini and even in our own communities. Let me also call Bongani Ndlovu. He is from the Soul City Institute. He's a senior manager for media and content development, and he's produced programs like Soul City, which I'm sure many of you have seen on television. He's also produced radio programs for Soul City, and he's even produced programs like Intersections, where he was a consultant. So he's really a health communications expert. Let me also welcome Evan Meyer. He is from Tranquility Home, and he is a senior counselor. Thank you so much. I'd like to start off and ask you, Evan. Is it working? Aiko. When Jeanne was sharing her testimony, you were the person whose hands she was delivered. Share with us some of those early days.
The early days is very, very difficult because patients go into some severe withdrawal symptoms. Some of the symptoms that they go into, it's like severe body ache, cold sweats, hot sweats, body pain, nausea, bilious feelings. And John Marie was a really, really, really sad case because we took her in and we were scared that she was going to die. But we took a chance on her and she ate little bit by little bit. She was taking the medication that we were giving her. The medication stopped for withdrawals. At Tranquility Clinic, there is no withdrawal symptoms, so we free you of that. And she grew from strength to strength. And to be able to counsel a person like that is a tremendous honor, to be honest. She was open to the God concept from the beginning. She was ready to receive God, and she did. And we have a spiritual component to Tranquility, which we talk about a higher power of your understanding. We preach the gospel of God, and we treat people who are really, really sick. We have the Nyaupe gangs that we treat, a lot of them come from the townships. It's come from the poor community, and I think it's peer pressure that, like John Marie was saying, peer pressure. You do it with your friends, you do it with your colleagues, and it becomes a real problem when you use it longer than, I would say, 21 days, and you become addicted to it straight away.
And when it comes to issues of withdrawal and the physiological impact that it has, I'm going to come back to you to talk a little bit more about that, because I'd like to ask to follow a journey of somebody. How do you start being an addict? We've seen Jeanne-Marie sharing that she didn't feel like she fitted in, and in a way drugs helped her to escape. And I want to bring Phumlani. You are working as a senior counselor at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. Tell us more about the work that you do there.
Okay, is it working?
Yeah. It's working,
okay.
Yes.
South African Depression and Anxiety Group, it's a mental health organization. You know, we focus on all aspects of mental health and substance abuse. The reason why we also focus on substance abuse is because in most cases, people who use substances, they don't just start by using substances. There's, psychological issues that leads them to using substance abuse. Things like depression. In most cases, when people have depression, they tend to do what we call self-medication, by taking drugs, alcohol, nyaube and stuff, because it makes them feel better. It makes them forget their problems. So as South African Depression, we do talks, we go around doing talks about mental health and substance abuse. We also do counseling. We have 18 different helplines that people can call us at. We also have 24 helplines which they can reach us at if they want someone to talk to. And yeah, we do a lot of school talks, community talks, and we also find people rehabs. As the member of the panel has said, John, that people need to go to rehab in order for them to, when they have a problem with substance abuse. You find that you come from the township, you don't have money. To be honest, rehabs are very expensive.
Right.
So we also have rehabs that that are free, which are subsidized by government. So we know those rehabs, and when you call us, we can be able to assist you to be able to be accepted at the rehab. But there's going to be a process that is going to take place before you can go into any rehab.
Let me bring you in, Phumlani. You're working for the Soul City Institute, and as much as we know you for all your radio and your TV content, but Soul City Institute runs from January to January, whether you're on air or off air, and you're really in health issues, and substance abuse is one of the issues that you deal with at Soul City. Tell us more about the interventions that you are a part of as the Soul City Institution.
Thanks, Kanya, and maybe also let me take this opportunity and greet everyone in the house in Kananga. So I, as a woman working for Soul City, just to answer your question, we've got a number of interventions, and the way we do the interventions that we do at a bigger scale is because I think every social problem in the country, for people to really take it serious, it has to be on a bigger scale,
Right.
on mass media, right? Because you want to activate something in the hearts and in the minds of people. In Yawupe, for instance, the clip that we watched earlier, you know, when I was doing that production, my attitude changed towards abantu ababhemi Yawupe, because I think we've got this thing. In fact, most of us have got this thing when these boys come, you know, they're begging in the streets, they're coming to your car, you know, like asking for money, like, you know, or sometimes you just turn a blind eye,
Or we roll up the window.
exactly.
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So because we do not understand that in fact there's no normal person who would actually do what they do, but the addiction actually drives them to do what they do, because you know what David was saying, that you know it's not that ngiyathanda ukuthi ngis-injecte enyaweni, but if there's no veins in my hand, you know, so you know definitely that in fact this person is not normal, but there is something that actually drives them to do what they do. And my attitude really changed in understanding ukuthi addiction is a sickness, and addiction is a sickness. It needs to be treated. People should not be prosecuted because they're addicted. So we do the work that we do because we want to provoke, you know, people's emotion. We also want to educate people so that people really understand, you know, the deeper levels of addiction, because it's people are sick. That's the long and short of it.
On our chairs, you would have noticed when you came back from the break that there is material that has been placed on each and every seat that is from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. There are numbers on those pamphlets. There's also the wristbands, and we've really shared that material so that you can you know, be able to see what it is that they do, but also if you do need that practical help and you're able to ask. I want to share also that we are going to be taking your questions. If you look to the screens on either side, there is a WhatsApp number there where you can WhatsApp your question. We know that there's a mixed group here. There's parents, there's young people, and we are aware that especially young people, you may not always feel comfortable sharing something with your parents and elders are here. So what we've done is we've created a system where you can ask us your question, but you don't have to say your name. Okay, you don't have to say hi or whoever. But if you do have a question that you would love to ask, here's a WhatsApp number that you can send your question to, and it will flash on the screen. We do also have pieces of paper where you can also write your question, and we do have 3 individuals who will be walking around during the Q&A session with the microphone, and you can also have an opportunity to ask your question, or you can hand somebody a piece of paper to ask that question, and again, you don't have to say your name because we want to be as transparent and as open as possible. Let me come back to you, Evan. And you know, he was saying that drug addiction is not a crime. It's a sickness. However, in the process of being a drug addict, you do break the law. That I think is where the law does come in. It's not the illness itself, but it's what you do. You know, Jeanne spoke about illness, you know, leading her to do a lot of things that she's not proud of. And Jeanne, maybe let me bring you in here. You know, you intersected with the law a number of times. Maybe tell us a bit about that.
Well, yeah, I was locked up 4 times. I went to prison.
4 times?
4 times. Only a waiting trial. I was never sentenced, thank God. Also doing things for my addiction. Things that I would never, ever think of doing, like now. But it pushed me to such a point that I had to make a plan. And whatever came, I did it. Whether it was stealing cars, whether it was...
You can steal a car?
Yeah. I could. I choose not to do that anymore. Yeah. But yeah, or whether it would be whatever comes my way on the street, and the kind of people that you get involved with. It is such a dangerous lifestyle. Gangsters and drug lords and the stuff, because you look innocent at the time, you know, before the drugs really take over and you're just on the street. But they use you. They use you to your full potential, if I can put it like that. And they will make you do anything because you're so, how can I put it, afhankelijk.
You're desperate.
Desperate, dependent. You're so dependent on that drug that you will do anything just not to have that withdrawals. So, yeah.
Pumlani, you work in an institution where people call you on a daily basis. You work as a counselor. You field a lot of calls. You know, people saying, I have a problem. I have anxiety. I'm depressed. I'm addicted. Tell us or give us a picture of what's happening out there according to the calls that you're getting, the cries for help that are reaching your hotline that you run as SEDEC.
Okay, by the way, I'm working tonight, so if you happen to call us, you might speak to me. So, yeah, and you know, there's a lot of issues out there. Like, people are going through the worst. You know, you might see someone walking on the street wearing a nice tuxedo and think, driving a nice Mercedes Benz and think everything's okay. You know, everyone is affected by mental health, especially depression. It doesn't choose whether you are rich or you are poor. And trust me, depression can lead you to being an addict. It can lead you to using drugs because you want to numb the pain that you're feeling. You know, you want to, you know, to feel like you belong somewhere. And in most cases, you're gonna end up being, you know, surrounding yourself with the wrong group. The group that will, you know, make you, not even make you, that will inspire you to use drugs because you're gonna see them as if they're happy and you want to have that happiness. So coming to talk about calls that we get a lot of different calls. You know, mostly we get calls about, you know, family issues, especially relationships. We get calls of people are going through financial issues, which can lead to depression. We get calls of people who, like young people who feel like their parents, they don't understand them. Because, you know, we grew up in a culture where, like I grew up in a township, I'm from Tembisa, you know, so you grew up in a township or grew up in a rural area where you don't have a good relationship with your father, you can't speak to your father, you're going through the worst, you know, and as a child you've been raped. You go to your mom and tell your mom that, you know, my uncle has raped me. The first thing that they do, they try to cover up. And they tell you, you're not going to talk about this. Or they blame you for that. And as a child, you feel like no one cares about you. And that will lead you to depression. And depression might lead you to using drugs or committing suicide. You know, per day, as SADC, we get plus minus 600 calls from people, you know, seeking help, you know, crying for help. You know, some you might find that it's a minor thing. Some, you know, it's serious issues. But to us as SADC, we don't have, you know, we take each and every case serious. Doesn't matter even if you come to us and say, my girlfriend just dumped me, you know, I feel like committing suicide. That's a serious case because we know cases of people who have killed themselves because the relationship didn't go well. You know, we know cases of people who have committed suicide because, you know, they had a clinical depression. You know, clinical depression is when you just cannot live at all. But one thing that we always try to the message that we try to tell people is that there is help. You know, suicide should not be a secret. Using drugs should not be your resort. You know, falling into depression alone should not be, you know, the resort. You can get help. You know, we have psychologists, we have psychiatrists, we have counselors, we even have doctors who can assist you. You know, to your point, because some people who are depressed, they have to use, unfortunately, they have to use medication. You know, and the most important thing, as a church, I believe that you also have counselors at church. You know, where people can go to the counselors and talk, you know, with the counselors with whatever that they're going through. Because it's very important that, you know, because we find people who will come to us and say, look, do you believe in God? You know, as a counselor, in most cases, I have to be neutral. You know, but at the same time, when someone comes to you and say, do you believe in God? Obviously, I do believe in God. Then they'll start asking you about, do you think if I kill myself, am I committing a sin? Those kind of things. And that's where the church has to come in. And as a church, when someone comes to you and say, when I commit suicide, is that a sin? Am I going to go to heaven or hell? You have to attack that, you know, conversation in a very, very careful way. Don't say, yes, you're going to go to hell. or don't say, yeah, no, you're not going to go to hell, but you have to make the person understand the importance of living and not taking their life. So we get a lot of different calls, and different situations, and each and every call is different. I can get a suicide call, I can get like 5 suicide callers, in a space of an hour, but I will deal with each and every case different, because as humans we're not the same, so we cannot treat each case the same.
Yeah, but just on what he's raising, when people come to tranquility, there's the physiological part of it, but there's the emotional and the psychological part. Talk to us about that.
We find that a lot of our patients come in and they've got emotional trauma. 90% of my female patients have been raped before in some form or the other, or sexual abuse. 90% of my patients have tried suicide or planned to commit suicide. And feelings of loneliness, feelings of depression, feelings of abandonment, feelings of not belonging, these are all what we call triggers. These triggers, they put the people into a position where they feel they're not adequate, they're not good enough, they're not loved enough. And we find that a lot of the patients that come through a lot of physical and psychological trauma before they come to tranquility.
Right. And how do you deal with that? Because you said, for instance, somebody who's a heroin addict takes 3 days to get clean.
Yes.
But the rest of the time is dealing with the mind and the spirit.
Okay, what we do is we have a very strong spiritual component to our treatment program. And I'll just quote two steps that I actually use. The first one is we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Now, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That is our second step. Our third step is giving our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand it. We do very, very good work in terms of bringing people to the higher power. You find a lot of people that come in are atheists, or they just don't believe in God. We've also had some Satanists which we converted to Christianity or to a higher power of their understanding. And that higher power could be anything. It could be a person, it could be a God, it could be a universe, it could be nature. And we teach them. And we also have an outsourced psychiatrist and psychologist, clinical psychologist, to help us with the treatment of the patients.
And for you at Soul City Institute, Bongani, if I can come in there, how do you then take the mass media interventions that you do, like your radio programs and your TV programs, and translate that into help for people who need it?
Yeah, thanks, Kanye. So we use different forms of storytelling. So we use just a normal drama where we create a fictional story about people's experiences, etc. We also use documentaries, where we follow real life stories of people, and then we tell those stories because sometimes there always has to be that balance. There has to be the balance of telling a story that you create based on people's life experiences, but you also actually then have to tell the real life stories as people tell you, as in the case of the documentary that we just saw earlier. So you can actually then stretch it further by having a series of talk shows on radio where you really get to discuss these real life issues, and for people then they'll call in, ask whatever questions, and then you refer them to the different rehab centers. If people really want rehab centers, you can refer them to organizations like Tranquility or organizations like SADA if people really need psychological help on an ongoing basis. So it depends what the issues are, and then we always find what would be the best format to tell or address this particular issue.
And do you find that it has had an impact? Like, the programs on radio and TV, how do you measure your impact?
So, I'm sure 90% of the people here who are at least over 24 years, they know Soul City. Because, of the many years of storytelling on SABC and on SABC radio, etc., etc. So we use different methodologies to evaluate the impact that we have in the lives of people. I mean, I certainly remember when Soul City had I'm sure people will remember there was a series on gender-based violence. This man was abusing his wife, and in fact, when that series was on air back then, I was still in high school. I never imagined in my life that in fact I was going to work for an organization and become a producer that does storytelling. But I remember that time my uncle was abusing my girlfriend at that time, and he was a heavy drinker. So when my uncle became nice guy, sweet guy, like when he's sober. But like he would step there, apa kitchen is distracting. Do you understand? But I remembered because for me that was the lived experience that I saw at home. And I'm on TV programs I found about Soul City, which really spearheaded different helplines for women who are in trouble and all that. And the more awareness about these programs, even if you wrong, it's not allowed. You get a different perspective, then you're able to call a police, etc. And then you really get help. So it depends. I mean, at different points we use different methodologies to really evaluate the impact of our progress, but we definitely know that they do.
You've mentioned something quite interesting, and Kungani, I want to bring you in here. You're doing your master's on the stigmatization of mental and health issues in our Black townships or in our Black communities. What have been some of your findings? Do you find that people are misinformed? Because most times we just say, hey, baby drug, and it's just a general thing, or when somebody has a mental health issue, we just say, hey, we are fat, they are crazy, you see, ding profit, ding, there's many things, we don't go to the level of distinguishing, is it depression, is it schizophrenia, is it dementia, what is it? We just give it a blanket label and we deal with, like, everybody comes from township. I don't know, do you guys have township? Everybody's got ihlana where they know, and we've kind of accepted them as part of the community, and we just say, hey, we say and we give it that kind of label. But that is part and parcel of the stigma, isn't it? That people don't want to be known as ihlana.
No, the problem, one of the findings that I've made in our communities, as Black people, is that education, it's a huge problem. We don't want to educate ourselves about the thing that has to do with mental health. To us, anyone who has a mental issue, even if it is stress, stress is nothing. Like it's like the smallest. But to touch people when you are stressed, that means you are shy. That means you are crazy. And as a crazy person, you get isolated. No one wants to be with you. No one wants to help you. No one wants to understand what is it that is going on in your life that makes you feel stressed. When you have depression, it goes up. No one cares why do you have depression. Once you start talking about you want to kill yourself, it's always about attention seeker. This person wants attention, because we promised to give him this and that. Then he's threatening to kill himself or to kill herself. So we don't understand what is mental illness exactly as the community, and it's one of the things that I feel like, as in our schools, especially public schools. I went to a public school from primary to high school, so we don't get taught those things. What is stress? What is depression? How do you differentiate between the two? What is bipolar? What is schizophrenia? What is psychosis? Those kind of things. We don't get taught the difference between those illnesses. To us, it's under one blanket, which is uhlanya. And when uhlanya, you have to be isolated. Hence, when you go to township, you will find someone walking on the street, ugly there and not wearing properly and stuff. To us, that's uhlanya. that person, you might find they have schizophrenia or they have bipolar. And when you take them to the hospital and they start getting treatment, they start getting therapy, they start getting medication, they will function badly, even though bipolar is a chronic illness. But it is manageable with proper medication and proper therapy. So once we start understanding as the community, we say, not obviously there are people who are like psychosis, there are people who are schizophrenic and stuff, which they and bipolar obviously they have they fluctuate, like they're not stable. But once we give them proper medication, proper support, we give them therapy, they will be able to function that way. There are people that you cannot even tell whether this person has personality disorder. There's a person that you cannot even tell whether this person has bipolar. When you see them, and one thing we need to understand as a community, even not to see like in this world right now, we are all somewhere, somehow, we have mental illness. No one is immune to mental illness. Today, something can happen to you. You can get an accident in a park, and that is going to traumatize you. And that trauma can lead to depression. And depression can lead to you wanting to commit suicide. Mapumala or find out something has happened to your bank account, you don't have money anymore. That will lead to you having depression. You might find that you lose savings, that might lead to depression. And you might find that you have bipolar, but you don't know. Not like there's nothing that has happened to you that has triggered that bipolar to show up. But today, something can happen to you to trigger you and to trigger that bipolar inside you. And only to find out when you go to hospital and be told that you have bipolar. So it's very important for us to be educated, to educate ourselves. Obviously, we cannot go back to school to do so about bipolar stuff. But today we have internet. We cannot only use internet for WhatsApp and social media, but we can use it to inform ourselves and to teach ourselves. And even in Software, we can have programs where we are taught about bipolar, we are taught about depression and mental health.
Jean, I want to bring you in here, and Mulani was raising some very important points. You also mentioned that you also, and perhaps to a certain extent, are still recovering from, I would say, depression and the anxiety. How do you deal with that on a daily basis without wanting to use again? Because those were your triggers.
I am on medication at the moment. I'm on antidepressants, which helps a lot. I also follow, as I said, the 12-step program. I apply it to everything I do in life. Every day, I go to meetings every day. I don't think since I've left rehab, there was one day that I didn't go to a meeting. So I do serve, or I try and do service as much as what I can in my state, my physical state. I've got a sponsor. You've got all these things that they teach you that you can use every day in everyday life that will help, help to keep you clean. Ask for help, tell someone, phone someone. If you don't want to go to a meeting, that's when you're supposed to go to a meeting, because that's when, it's needed. And, yeah.
And in the past 6 months, in terms of the way people have been treating you, you mentioned earlier on that, you had you'd been isolated by your own family because of the trouble that you had caused to them. Do you find that some people are skeptical about you saying you're clean?
Definitely, because I have been clean before without the program, and I have messed up again because it happens, but I didn't have, as I said, I didn't have the tools. Now when people, how can I put it, they're giving me another chance, and it's a beautiful thing, especially after what I've done to them. But saying sorry doesn't make it better anymore, because I've said too many times I've said sorry. So they want to see that I'm doing better. They want to see that I've changed. So it's hard work, it is, but I know I'll get there one day.
I want to remind our audiences that we do have a WhatsApp number, 074-747-7761, 074-747-7761, or alternatively, you can send a piece of, you can write your question and send the piece of paper to the last person in your row. We are going to be opening up questions in a moment or two. But what I also want to do Okay, I want to give you an opportunity to also have your say here, but I also want us to get a parent's perspective. And we do have a lady that works with you, and her name is Rihanna, and in a moment or two, she is seated on the floor, and we'll be giving her a microphone to just share from a parent's perspective, you know, just the journey of the family, dealing with an addict, dealing with the process of recovery, and just, you know, the ups and downs and the challenges that they've been through. But first, Kevin, let me come to you.
Okay, just as a matter of interest, I'm also an addict in recovery. I'm an addict and an alcoholic. And my drug of choice was prescription medication. I was on benzodiazepines, which is calming and sleeping tablets. I drank a bottle of whiskey a day, and I drank a liter of morphine syrup a day, which I got from medical doctors. And I found that the prescription medication problem in our country is probably one of the biggest problems that we're not addressing.
Right.
And I think that people like yourself can actually look at the prescription medication problem that we have in the country, because we find that doctors prescribe very easily the medicines that are very easily addictive. And they're not informing or educating the patients with regards to their prescription medication, the addictiveness of the medication. So we get the prescription medication, we've got the Nyaupa, the heroin family, which we call the downers, and then there's also the uppers, which we call amphetamines, which is cat and crystal meth, which is a lot of the drugs, because most of the people start small. They start with weed or with marijuana, and they escalate. It's a progressive disease. If marijuana doesn't work anymore, they'll try cat. When they try cat, they try crystal meth. So it's an ongoing, long-term problem, and it's a disease of the body.
I'd like us to take the first round of questions. If there are, can those who are going to be walking around with roving mics just lift up their hands so I can see who am I? Can you come to the front so that the audiences can see you? Do we have microphones on the ground? Or are we using the ones that are on the stage? Okay, there are 2 microphones on either side of the room. If you do have questions that have already been submitted to you, you can read those out. If there are people who would like to also raise their hands for questions, I'll also be taking questions for the panel. I'll start with you, my sister. Can we have the mics turned on? Okay, I think they are.
The first question would be, what has the organization done to emphasize that depression is not some demonic attack, but it is a sickness?
All right, I think that's for you, Pumlan.
Okay. As I said, as South African Depression and Anxiety Group, we do school talks, we do community talks, we do radio shows, we do TV interviews. So, and we also have pamphlets that we distribute to communities and to schools, to church, you know, just to teach people about the importance of what, you know, mental health. Actually, depression specifically, it's an illness. You know, when you say something is an illness, it means you cannot go to the doctor and take blood tests and be tested. But it's something that, you know, you sit down with a psychiatrist or with a psychologist, and with the symptoms and the behavior that you are showing, you know, we can tell that you have depression or you're not. And when we do scans in your brain, because in our brains we have chemicals, so we can tell if the person has depression through that. So I know that a lot of people, they tend to think that, you know, any mental illness, you know, you have a demon. No, you don't have a demon. It's an illness. It's just like any other, you know, disease that we have. It's just that we cannot do blood tests to check it. But it's an illness, and it's treatable or it's manageable. So we do a lot of community talks, school talks, you know, church talks, radio shows, TV interviews, to make sure that we teach people about the importance of not, you know, confusing depression with, you know, Imimoya, ME and stuff.
All right, my sister on the other hand.
So there are 3 questions.
I think we'll take all 3 at the same time, yeah.
Okay. So the first one is it true that most people who end up doing drugs somehow are intelligent and it's just like very easily, so their mind is not challenged enough. And then the second question is does our lifestyle today result so much to depression in our society/community? And then the last one is, what strategy can be used to identify people or children at schools and in our community that they are depressed before they can actually then get into or find drugs as being a solution?
All right, I think Eben can take the first question, which was, is it true that drugs are mostly abused by people who are highly intelligent and they just don't know how to manage their intelligence, to paraphrase the question?
Okay, that is not true. That's professors in treatment and equality. We've had people that are mentally handicapped in equality. The drug addiction sees no race, color, creed, intelligence